Welcome to the August edition of North St. Paul Notes. I'm your host, Paul Anderson. Coming up in the next half hour, I'll visit with members of the American Legion Post 39 to learn about their history that goes back over 100 years. Stay tuned, North St. Paul Notes is straight ahead. Hello and welcome to the August edition of North St. Paul Notes. We hope this show will keep you up to date on the news and events that are of interest to the residents of North St. Paul. Today I'm joined by Ken Giannini and Commander Tom Burns from the American Legion Post 39. Post 39 began over 100 years ago when 15 veterans of World War I, all residents of the village of North St. Paul, met to discuss joining the American Legion, which is at that time was a new national organization dedicated to veterans. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I should have added that Ken Giannini is the Public Relations and Special Events Officer for the Post 39.
Yep.
And I did mention that Tom is the Post Commander. So you folks have both had time in the military and have different experiences, I'm sure. How long were you in the military, Tom?
I did 4 years of active duty and 17 years in the Minnesota National Guard and Army Reserve.
Okay.
So I earned my military retirement.
Okay, you sure did. And Ken?
Not quite 3 years. I got an early out. After the Vietnam War, they started letting troops out early. So
Okay, sure. So you were in Army?
I was in the Army, yes.
And Tom, you were?
I was in the Army for my active duty in the Army National Guard. Pardon me, Army National Guard and Army
Okay.
Reserve.
I spent 7 years in the Air National Guard in Minnesota, so I had some experience, not like being on active duty. In those days, we never had the basic training even. We served that time in Minnesota down at Home and Field, so it's changed now.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't join without spending some time on active duty.
And I think if I had to do it over, I would have gone in the Air Force for some reason. I'm not sure why, but
I'm sure there's always second guessing about that.
Oh yes.
You think, well, it could have been better.
I was trying to go in the Air Force and couldn't wait that long. I had my draft notice.
Oh, I thought that's better than being rejected, I suppose, or maybe not.
Not rejected. I knew where they were sending draftees at that time.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
And that was not the best choice.
No.
Well, how long have you been members of the American Legion now?
I'm a 13-year member. I
13?
didn't join until after I retired.
I see. Okay. And Tom?
I've been there 7 or 8 years. I think it's going on 8 now. And
Okay.
again, like Tom, it's one of my regrets that I didn't join sooner because it's a great organization.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, and I was talking to Tom earlier about the difference between the American Legion and the VFW.
Yeah.
And
Of course, their title is Veterans of Foreign Wars, so you can maybe talk about that a little bit, what that difference is.
okay, the American Legion, you just had to have served on active duty.
Okay,
The VFW, you had to have been served in a war zone, I think, for at least 1 day. And currently, there's lots of places that you can go, to include Korea. The DMZ in Korea is still considered a war zone.
okay. Anything you want to add to that?
Nothing I can add, no.
Okay. You're celebrating 100 years now, and so the beginning was in 1919, right after
1919.
World War I. Can you tell us more about that, Ken?
Well, as you already mentioned, 15 veterans from North St. Paul, village in North St. Paul, got together. I could never find out where they actually were meeting, whether it was a church or somebody's house, or of course even at that time Newman's was around, but
Yeah,
they could have met there. But yeah, but they got together, talked about the new organization,
right.
and decided to file an application and
Okay.
received a temporary charter of August 1st, 1919.
Okay. And I know that at that time in 1919, that was just before the city hall, the second city hall was built. The first one was on the same site as the one on 7th Avenue that was torn
Yep.
down and is going to be a building site pretty soon for apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And that building came up in, I think, around 1920. And before that, the meeting place for a lot of organizations was the Fraternal Hall, which was down on Helen Street, the corner of Helen and 7th Avenue. And that's a building that a lot of people don't remember because it was torn down maybe back in the 60s or 70s. So that's now, well, I guess we could call it ancient history practically. Yeah.
Don't say that.
I guess I shouldn't say that. That's admitting too much. What was the purpose, do you feel, that you know about as far as forming the organization? Do you?
Well, the first main purpose of the organization was to gain rights for the veterans. For example, hospitalization and all the rights like that. And because of the American Legion, the Department of Veterans Affairs was created, or the VA.
Okay.
The American Legion and the VFW were the primary push behind the development of that organization, and they did a lot of work on setting up how the organization was to run.
Okay, sure. I don't know if, I don't think the VFW came along that early.
I don't believe so. No.
Seems to me it was in the 30s
Yep.
when that was founded, but I'm not positive
I'm
about
not positive
that.
on that either.
I was going to look that up, and one of the things I forgot to do, so among other things. You mentioned, Ken, that 1927 is where the official records started. There must have been more before that, but somehow...
Yeah, we can't find them. And
Yeah.
early indications were that the post records were kept in a vault at the casket company.
Okay,
So I think when the casket company moved, and I'm not sure when they moved, the records either got destroyed or moved with them. So.
okay. And that happens sometimes when
Yeah.
when things moved. It's the same thing happened to the city records when they moved from the old city hall into the current city hall, that somehow things were lost, or they lost track of them anyway. I still hope we can find those things, because it helps to, rather than see an occasional newspaper article about council meetings, it helps to have the actual record, the minutes from those meetings.
And one of the charter members, Ernest Reif, was the son of the owner of the casket company. So
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he was the one who took it out of town. Actually, they moved probably sometime in the 30s. I'm not positive what the date was, but he was one of the original members listed. And there was quite a list of members among the originals. Just a few of those names I had here: Ernest Reif, Bernard Rankin, and Rankin, I know, was an employee of the casket company.
Okay.
And Percy Bannister, William Dablow, Frank Dablow, Guy Schomburg, Herman Whitty, Roland Luger, Leo Luger, Leo Orth. Leo Orth was a former owner of the North St. Paul Courier, an early name for the newspaper. Albert Montgomery, William Combs. I know Combs was a member of the VFW also. Arthur Reich, John Hanson, and Charles Campbell. So those are some of the names that you had listed that you found in your research. And so that was from, where did you get that information? Was that from the...
That was on the charter. We have actually at the Post, we have a list of the charter members
Oh, okay.
on the wall back in the hall.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's good to have that information, and among the things that might have been lost, at least you got a few things that,
The charter should always be posted during the meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if a member of the post has died during that month, then the charter is draped with black cloth.
oh, okay.
That
Do you have the
doesn't always
charter?
happen anyway. Yeah, we have the charter framed in the building,
It is in the building. Where is
Yeah.
that located?
on the back wall of the meeting hall.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I guess I don't remember seeing it. I'll have to look for that next time I'm
Yeah,
in
if
there.
you come in, just ask and we show it to you.
Sure, okay.
And getting the charter, the charter wasn't given to us till what, 1929?
1923 was the
23.
official charter, but
Okay,
1919 was the temporary charter.
okay.
And about 5 years ago, National said that the age of the post goes back to the application for the temporary, because what they did is they sent the charter in and everybody was using pencil and paper.
Oh.
And your application could be at the bottom of the pile for months,
Sure,
because whoever came in next was on top.
sure.
And they got so many applications that,
I suppose, yeah. And that was a time when membership could be formed because there were a lot of veterans who came
Yeah,
out
yeah.
and were looking for something that would help them and become another organization for them to have, to attend. Tell us about the meeting places, the club rooms that you've had, or the locations for your membership to meet. What?
well, most of the time they met at, like I said, without their early records, we're not sure exactly where they met, but then again,
Right.
there was only 15, 20 members.
Right.
It wasn't until the 30s that they started growing membership a little bit. And we know they started off meeting in the village hall in the library on the second floor.
Right.
And then they started talking about getting their own place. But, you know, money was a factor until they started getting more members, and that was in the 40s during World War II when they started getting more members. They started getting a better financial base, and they started looking for a place of their own.
Okay.
They settled on the Furlong Barn.
Okay. Yeah.
They
Which
were
is
negotiating
still
to buy
standing-
that. It's
still
still
standing
standing.
today.
It's, yeah, it's a house now, and it looks like a barn. But
Yeah. Right.
it's a house now, right behind the car lot. And they ended up, I'm not sure, well, I can think, they would have had to put a lot of money into the Furlong Barn.
Yeah.
It was about $4,500 to buy it, and they would have had to do a lot of work, spend a lot of money to turn it
Right.
into something. The Old Owl Tavern, which is one house over and across the street from the Furlong Barn.
Okay. Yeah. The
Yeah.
street going
Yeah, I think
going
that's
east
47th
from.
Avenue. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
became available.
Sure.
So they ended up buying that. It was a little more costly, but it was already set up as a bar. But they had some problems they could not get a liquor license.
Oh.
Oakdale or whichever township it was
Might
in
have
at
been
that time.
Northdale or
Yeah.
yeah. It's hard to remember what the exact name was. It's
Yeah.
changed over the years.
They would not issue them a 3-2 license for that bar, so it was a setup bar mostly. They had some meetings there.
Meaning set up.
Yeah, you bring your own booze. Well, you know,
So they sold
they sold
whatever
the-
mix you
yeah, whatever
wanted
mix,
to have.
and yeah, you brought your own.
Yeah.
So, but they were there for about 5 years
Okay.
and started looking around at other places because they couldn't get a 3-2 license. So they eventually sold that building to Dr. Crombie
Right.
and rented one of his buildings, which was a bar in North St. Paul on 7th Avenue.
Okay.
At that time, the address was 134 something
Okay.
at that time. But so they moved down there.
And that's right about where Sidewinders is now.
Yeah, that's exactly where
Yeah,
Sidewinders is.
and
Yeah.
that over the years had changed from, well, part of it was a blacksmith shop,
Okay.
and there were different businesses in that location too over the years.
And as they got more and more members, like I said, after World War II, membership kind of jumped pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to go back to meeting at the library because the building wasn't big enough.
Okay.
Until they bought out the floor. There was a florist shop next door. They bought that, expanded, and then they started having meetings within the club room. So
Okay.
meetings and events.
So that gave them the space that they needed. And that wasn't where the florist shop later was. I don't remember exactly what happened there in that location, but there was a florist shop where the frame shop previously was located, and that was on the other side of the medical center, which was east of the Sidewinders building.
Yeah, on the other side of the parking lot.
Yeah, that's right.
And now, it was in '86 when they purchased. It had several names over the years. It was a grocery store,
Okay.
and then it was a liquor store and bait shop.
Okay.
Interesting combination.
Right.
But they moved into that January 1st, 1986. They moved into that building
Okay.
after restoring it.
Sure.
And that's where we are now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a history that I wasn't familiar with. I was out of town during that period and didn't keep track of things as well. But before, originally, it was a grocery store,
Right,
supermarket.
yeah.
National Tea, was it? Or what was
Yeah,
it?
I believe National Tea.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that gave a lot of space.
Oh, definitely. Space
So-
for storage, office space, large parking lot. Yeah, a lot of space. Space for a bar, big bar, and a hall,
Sure.
meeting hall.
And it's still serving that
It's still serving
same
that
purpose.
Yeah.
We had talked earlier about a previous use of a fundraiser that you had it back in the 30s, we believe, and it's a photo that I think we'll see showing a miniature golf course.
Miniature golf, yes. Yeah.
And you can see where the stack was with the stove in the background. That apparently was heating the place. It could have been a wood or coal stove, I suppose. But it shows a fairly crowded space.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I don't recognize that space, the interior of that at all. And so it could have been on that same site where the blacksmith was previously, which also later was a repair garage, automobile repair garage. And so there were different businesses in that location.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And it's, there was mention of the course in our meeting minutes. It didn't mention where it was. I started seeing mentions in the fall of 1930,
Mm-hmm.
and by July of that next year, they had disconnected the power and sold all the golf clubs
Okay.
for 50 cents each. But they were charging 25 cents for 2 games of golf,
Okay.
2 rounds of golf on the course.
So that was a fundraiser you mentioned. You think?
I believe so, something to raise money.
And there was a national, or was it a state convention that was going to be held there? And
This district, it was a district convention in
convention,
31,
okay.
yeah. District convention in
31,
1931,
okay.
held at the high school
okay,
district. We're in 4th district,
all right.
yeah.
No record of how much money they made or whether
No,
they
I
actually.
haven't, I didn't see any.
Okay. When I talked to you earlier, you referred to the post as a family post.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What you meant by that?
Well, yeah, the Legion is a family. It began as the veterans, but then it's going to be coming up too. In 1926, the auxiliary was chartered at our
Okay.
post. I'm not sure what year it was nationally.
Not long before that.
Yeah. So that was technically spouses of the veterans, daughters and granddaughters.
Okay, that's the auxiliary.
That's the auxiliary.
Okay.
And then in 1986 at our post, again, I'm not sure when it happened nationally, but the Sons of the American Legion chartered at our post. And that's
Okay.
sons and grandsons of veterans. And I'm not sure, sometime I've heard nephews, but I don't know about that.
Well, and not just grandsons. I'm eligible because of my great, great, great grandfather fought in the Civil War.
Oh, okay.
And that's, it goes back to essentially if you had, could prove you had a relative that fought in the Revolutionary War, that was direct paternal linkage to you.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because that's going a bit farther back, and
Yes,
a
yeah.
lot of our forefathers weren't even in this country at that time. So,
Well, the rest of my forefathers weren't here.
And most of the Sons of the American Legion are also veterans themselves, so
okay.
and they're members. And then the last one is the American Legion Riders, were
that's
chartered in 2014,
Something like that.
2013, 2014. They're all veterans who ride motorcycles.
Right.
And so they're the newest member of the family. So it's all one big family, and everybody helps every organization with their events, raising money for their causes, and they all help the post raise money for its causes.
Okay.
And the past 2 years, our writers group has been extremely helpful in everything that we did. They've
Yes.
shown a lot of enthusiasm for getting in there and doing the stuff that nobody else wants to do.
Yeah,
Sure. Okay.
they're there when we put flags out at the cemeteries and to pick them up when we go back out to pick them up after Memorial Day. They've been a big help.
I know that's a job that always requires a lot of volunteers, and I'm sure sometimes it's hard to get enough volunteers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
yeah.
Do you have records about the size of the organization, how that has changed over the years? I know you said 15 members initially, and then there was great growth after World War II,
and Korea.
which
yeah.
would stand to reason, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. We don't have, there's mentions every so often in the post as to how many members there are. And it's slow, like I said, it slowly crept up, but yeah, once they had World War II and Korea, it jumped up. We're at, I believe, 598, close to 600
Okay,
right now.
yeah. And could you say how many are actually active?
It's hard to say.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
hard to
it's
say.
because some people show up for something once in a while
Right. Mm-hmm.
as they can. Plus, we have a number of snowbirds too.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Anything in the winter, they're not going to be there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess the weather makes a difference too. So,
Yes, it does. Because most of our members are from, a lot of our members are from early Vietnam, Korea, and what few World War II members we have. I'm not sure how many there are there. I only know of 2 that are relatively active.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Is it difficult to build membership now? Is it much harder than it once was? And
Yes, it is.
what's the reason, do you think?
And, well, part of the reason is there are too many things around now for the younger people to do besides raising their families. You go out in the smaller towns, the Legion or the VFW is the only game in town.
Right,
Here they've got the Eagles and all the other fraternal organizations,
right.
volunteer fire department around too. So it is harder in the larger metropolitan areas to get membership.
There are too many options now.
Yes.
Right, yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
I know a lot of fraternal organizations have lost members, and it's harder to get the younger people involved, maybe partly just because they have family responsibilities
Yes, that's a lot.
that keep them away.
That was essentially why I didn't join younger.
Sure.
Same thing with me, like I said. I didn't join until after I fully retired.
Yeah.
And,
Well, we have a few minutes left. Can you talk a little bit about the contribution the American Legion has made to the city of North St. Paul? Just a few comments about that?
that's the other part of our mission, not only to help veterans, but also serve our community.
Sure.
And they started serving their community right away, not as much financially. They had what was called a Safety First Committee that they put together to go out to local businesses, inspect the business, make suggestions on making things better and more safer for the employees. They also, the Safety First Committee also lobbied Sioux Railroad and the Railroad and Warehouse Commission about crossings at White Bear Avenue, at Margaret Street.
Right.
They also managed to get a watchman for a pedestrian crossing for the kids that had to cross twice each, anywhere from 2 to 4 times each day going back
Right.
and forth to school. So they had a watchman there watching for trains and keeping the kids from getting hurt. But once they got started building a financial base, there was more contributions, especially to police and fire.
Sure.
They donated to local fire department or police departments around, but in North St. Paul, defibrillators for police cars, shotguns, a motorcycle for the police department, and the largest expenditure back in the 70s and 80s was an aerial ladder fire truck.
Oh, sure.
And that, I found out that fire truck is still in use today,
Yeah.
part of it.
Right.
The ladder part was put on a different chassis.
Okay.
The chassis itself was used by the town maintenance department for a while and then sold to a farmer to haul hay.
Oh, okay.
Haul hay.
Well, I know there are a lot of other contributions that were made, and I know that our historical society benefited from help from the different organizations too. And actually, at this point, we are out of time, and I want to thank you fellas for being on the program with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Sure.
Yes.
We've been talking to Ken Giannini, who is the Public Relations Director and Special Events Officer for the American Legion Post 39, and also Tom Burns, who is the Post Commander at the current time. So hopefully we'll get a lot of viewers who are interested in seeing you too. So we'll see what kinds of comments they make.
We hope they come out. We are open to the public.
Sure. We're out of time on this month's show. Join us again next month when we'll bring you more news about North St. Paul. I'm Paul Anderson, speaking for everyone at the City of North St. Paul. Thank you for watching.